Hello everyone, I am the Desert Gardener, and today we're talking fertilizers. So in my last video we were up-potting pepper plants, and I totally forgot to mention something important, and that is whenever you're up-potting, whether that's going from one container to another or going from a container into the garden, you always want to fertilize with a liquid fertilizer. The reason for this is to help prevent and avoid transplant shock. And this is pretty normal. Whenever you transplant a plant, the plant will slow and even stop its growth for a period of time. And that's anywhere from a couple of days to even a couple of weeks. And there are a couple of things you can do to prevent that. And the first thing is to be very gentle with the plant when you're transplanting it. And the second is to give it a liquid fertilizer, something that it can absorb right away. And this will help get it up and growing again as soon as possible. So what fertilizer do you use? So that got me thinking, it's been a while since I've talked about fertilizers. Now I did a very deep dive into it about 3 years ago. And I still stand by that video. It was a good video, but it was very complicated. And I found even I was having trouble keeping track of what needed to be done when and where and how. So I decided last year that I was going to try to simplify things and make it as simple, easy, and as affordable as I could. Did it work? Actually, it did. I had one of the best tomato crops I've ever had. So I'm going to do that again this year, and I'm going to go over it with you to show you what I did. So the first step, and there's only 3 steps, the first step is very simple. You're always going to amend your garden soil with compost. Now, if you're not sure about how to do your own compost, I did a whole video on home composting. I'll put a link to that below. It's really quite easy. Every gardener should have a compost pile. And even if you're in containers, you're still going to be adding compost to your container mix. I think I talked about that in the last video. I mix it 50-50. So compost in your garden and compost with your container mix, and if you're in containers, a little bit of azomite. So I think it's 1 tablespoon per container. This gives the micronutrients to your containers that your garden has, but your container soil does not. The next step is whenever you're transplanting to use a liquid fertilizer. So you've probably heard me talk in the past that I really like the Kellogg's Fish and Kelp. It's an organic liquid fertilizer. It's a nice 222 NP and K. I've been using this for years. I really like it. Problem is, when I was doing a little research for this video, trying to get the links and stuff, which I'm going to put the links down below to everything I'm talking about today. When I was trying to get the link for this, I realized they don't make it anymore. No one carries it. I couldn't find it anywhere. So I started researching, trying to find a good alternative, something similar that you guys could use instead. The first and most obvious choice is the Alaskan fish emulsion. People have been using it for years. People swear by it. I never cared for it too much, mostly just because of the smell. It smells terrible, but it's a pretty decent product. It's a 511 NP and K. I do recommend, however, if you're going to use it, to buy the smallest container you can, because liquid fertilizers don't have the same shelf life as, say, a granular fertilizer. They really are only meant to last a year or 2. So get the smallest container you can, use it up, and get another one. Don't get one of those big gallon ones unless you really think you can use it all at once. Another good alternative was the Dr. Earth, and it's a 322. It's also an organic liquid fertilizer. It's very similar in NP and K to this, and it doesn't smell. There's no fish or kelp or anything in it. So I think that's another good option. I haven't used it myself, but I've heard good things about it. It has a very good NP and K, so I think it's another good option. And the last one is something called Chili Focus. Now, I've had my eye on this for years, and the reason I say I've had my eye on it is when I first discovered it like 4 or 5 years ago, it simply wasn't available in the United States. I think they make it in Australia, and there's some places in the UK that sell it, and with the shipping, it was just way too expensive, so I shined it on. However, again, when doing the research for this video, I noticed that there are a couple of retailers selling it here in the States, including Amazon. And I really like the nutrients in this. It has way more than the NP and K. It has a whole list of other nutrients. Too many to list here. I'll let you look it up with the link below. I also really like the ratio of nutrients that are in it. I think it is the absolute perfect ratio for plant nutrition. Problem is, it's still very expensive, even without the shipping. A little container, about 8 ounces, about this big, is about $25. And this, which is 4 times as large, is only $8. So you can see it's 8 times more expensive. So even though I think it's a really good product, it gets to the point where you start wondering, is it really worth that much more money? Maybe you're going to get a few more tomatoes, a few more peppers. Maybe your fruit and vegetables are going to be slightly larger, but is it really worth that much more money? I don't know. I'm trying to keep the cost down. I will try it one day, but in the meantime, I'm going to stick with the fish emulsion. So once we've done that, the third step is to pick out a good granular fertilizer. So right after I use this, I'm going to put a granular fertilizer on. Now, what fertilizer do you choose? Now, I've talked about this before. You can use any granular fertilizer you like, but there are a couple of criteria I think are very important. The first one is it needs to have all 6 of the major nutrients. That's the NP and K, as well as calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. The next thing is you need to look at some of the ratios. I think it's very important that the first number in the NP and K, which is the nitrogen, needs to be twice as high as the second number, the phosphorus. So that it doesn't matter what the numbers are, as long as that first number is at least twice as high as the second number. And the next thing is you need to look at the ratio between calcium and magnesium. Calcium needs to be at least 4 times as high as the magnesium number. Now, magnesium is important, but it's one of those ingredients your plants don't need a lot of. And it can block a plant's ability to absorb calcium and boron. So you don't want to use it too much, which is also why you want the calcium number to be much higher. So, unfortunately, there aren't very many granular fertilizers that meet all that criteria. This is pretty much the only one I've been able to find, and this is the Miracle-Gro Performance Organics All-Purpose Plant Nutrition Granules. That's quite a long title, and it's a 927 NP and K. It also has a good ratio of calcium, magnesium, and sulfur as well. And because it's a granular, you only have to use it once a month. It's slow release over the next couple of weeks or months, and I find this has been working very well for me. Now, while we're on the subject of, we were just talking about magnesium, I wanted to mention that you should never use Epsom salts in your garden. I know that there are a lot of YouTubers that recommend it. It really is a bad idea because of its ability to block calcium and boron. It also can cause problems down the road if you're overusing it. It can lead to blossom end rot and other issues. So keep the Epsom salts in your bathtub. The other one is when you're first planting your plants, don't put any fertilizer in the planting hole. I know that's another one a lot of YouTubers like to tell people to do. Add all this fertilizer into the planting hole. You don't want to do that. The nitrogen in those fertilizers can burn the roots and slow the growth of the plant. So there's no reason to do that. You should always do what's called a side dress, and you sprinkle the fertilizer on the ground around the plant and then simply water it in. That is the best way to do that. So just to recap, we're going to use compost whenever we first plant. We're going to use a liquid fertilizer anytime we transplant. And then oh yeah, and of course the azomite if you're using a container. And then once everything's planted, we're going to switch to a granular fertilizer and use that as the directions on the back call for the rest of the season. Very simple, very affordable, and I think it works very well. So that's it. If you got anything out of this, all I ask is you hit the like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, you'll have to subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.